Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show. Your host, of course, is David Chavez. I'm not David Chavez. My name is Mark Jeffrey. I'm the executive producer for the Strategy Sherpa Show. And you're probably wondering, well, what's he doing here? Well, David and I have had a bunch of conversations, and we were talking about the fact that a lot of people haven't had a chance to get to know David. He talks to a lot of guests and clients and bringing out a lot of great information from those folks, but we don't get a chance to learn about David and his background, and in fact, his journey and how he got here. So we wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit. So David, I want to say good morning to you, sir.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Thank you for hosting the show today.
Hey, I'm excited to give the listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't we jump right in? One of the things I was thinking about is of course, I know your background and some of our listeners might not. So talking about from a teenage hustler to a business guru. So what some folks don't know is you started, you were doing business before you were 16. Yep. At age 11, you're doing 3 newspapers. What are some of those lessons that you learned as a young entrepreneur that kind of influence your work today?
Well, I think it's a lot about discipline, and staying with something and having that ability to stay focused and to do what you're supposed to be doing. Like at 11, I did have 3 paper routes. I lived in La Mesa, California at the time, which is just right outside of San Diego. And I rode my bike probably about 10 miles a day, delivering those 3 paper routes. It was funny because I think that one of the best things that I learned is the discipline. And then it was a lot of fun every month after all that discipline to go collect the money. So that was the reward, right? And if I did a good job, I made good tips. So I made just as much in tips as I did in actually delivering the papers. So it was a good thing.
So, okay, so you made money. Now, when you're a kid who's 11, 12, 13, and you got a pocket full of money, I know what I would do. What did you do with that money, David?
Well, I had saved a lot. So, and then I just had money available to go and do things that I wanted to do and buy the things that I needed or wanted. So I used it wisely, but I used it mainly to do things what kids do with money, buy things that they want because your parents, I didn't grow up rich. So necessarily if I wanted something, I had to work for it to get it myself. I wasn't going to necessarily be given it.
Yeah, no, that's excellent that you got that kind of that creed early on about working hard and saving your money. So some folks don't know that you served in the Army. I want to thank you for your service, sir. I really appreciate it. So you served in the Army during, a tense time. So that was a time that was, under pressure. So those experiences under pressure, how did that shape your approach to business and your ability to lead teams through tough situations?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot from the Army, and I think the Army advanced my discipline even more, in the sense that I was in the artillery, so I was in one of what they call the combat MOSs, which MOS is, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically your job. It's what the military acronym is for your job. And so being in that, there was a lot of discipline. There was a lot of focus. That was at the time I was in Germany from 84 to 88 when the wall was still up. The wall came down about 9 months after I left. It was a really tense time leading up to that. Like the last year I was in the field about 274 days, and I probably helped me make my decision to get out of the Army and go to school. So I really went in the Army so I could go to school because my parents couldn't afford to send me to school, and there was no other way for me to really go. So,
well, before we wrap up the Army portion of your life, so I understand that during your stay in the Army, you were able to do 250 sit-ups and 112 push-ups. Is that correct? In just like 2 minutes?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I don't think I could do that today. I'd probably have to lose about 20, 30 pounds before I could do that. And then I'd have to actually work out to do it. But yes, it was pretty amazing how good a shape they had me in. So yeah.
Well, and that goes back to what you said before about discipline. And so again, I think for our listeners, it's something important to know about David is it's kind of a common theme is discipline.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you got out of the Army, and what school did you go to?
So I went to school when I was in the Army in Europe. I actually went to school for a few years with the City College of Chicago in Europe. They actually
Oh,
had a European campus. And then I finished at UNLV and then went to work with Arthur Anderson after that. So.
well, how did you go to Arthur Anderson? Did you just pick a big company you wanted to work for, or did they find you?
No, no. When I was at UNLV, one of the chairman of the accounting department, we were trying to become an accredited school, and we were going through the accreditation process, and he came to me and asked me to help the student side of it, and I did do that, and then I went on to start the professional accounting fraternity at UNLV called Beta Alpha Psi. So I became the first president of that, and that was a lot of fun. It was just a really good experience to get. That was the first accreditation of the accounting department, and the accreditation went on to the business school later on too. So it was a really good experience. And then from that led to me meeting a lot of business leaders in the community, and of course. You had to have good grades because Arthur Anderson wasn't hiring you if you weren't at the top of the class. So.
What did you do when you joined Arthur Anderson?
I started out in their tax department. I worked in their tax department for about a year, and then I switched over to the audit and consulting side and did auditing for about 2 years, and then did consulting the last couple of years I was there. I wouldn't say I was there 2 more years. It's about a year and a half because I was there about 4.5 years.
And so, did you enjoy the working on taxes, or did you like the consulting portion of those
Well, I
duties?
think tax is interesting, but tax is just law. It makes no sense. You can't use logic in tax because it's whatever the government's whim is at the time, right?
Yeah.
So it was interesting learning a little bit about it. And then, but I really enjoyed going out. I think a lot of people don't really understand what public accountants really do. A lot of it's communication. Probably 80% of it's talking to people, interviewing, trying to find out if the information going into the accounting system is coming out of the accounting system correctly. That was a big part of an audit. It's not really playing with the numbers as much as people think it is. It's more auditing process. So you
So
learn a
what
lot about how companies run.
right. So, what did you take away from Arthur Anderson? Was there processes that they that you still use today, or what?
Yeah. I think there was a couple things. One of the partners once said to me, because when I first started, I was asking, "Hey, why are you guys so anal about everything that goes out this door?" And he said, "David, you have to understand consulting. You have to understand this world." He said, "We sell an intangible service. Anything tangible we give to the customer has to be the highest quality." And he said, because they form their impression off of what we give them, because our service is intangible. It's the advice, but it's also the presentation of the physical things we give them.
Hey, so you were working for Arthur Anderson, and then what was the situation that had you leaving that organization?
Well, I had several job offers as I was going along. I did fairly well there. And people kept on coming to me to offer me a job, but a lot of times it was in larger companies where I just knew I'm an entrepreneurial spirit. I knew it would never just go over. So a friend of mine worked for a wealthy family, and he was what they called their special projects coordinator, and he was being promoted into a controller or CFO role. I can't remember. I think it was the CFO role, and he had contacted me, and I had to go through 9 different interviews, and the family that we were working with enjoyed it, and they invited me on. And I spent about 1.5 years there buying and selling companies and basically overseeing the financial and representing the family in the businesses that they owned. It's about 113 businesses.
Well, that's incredible. So at this point, you're still an employee and you haven't, become your own boss yet.
No.
So what led you down the path to go, you know what? I don't want to be an employee anymore. I think I want to branch out on my own. What
Yeah,
was
well,
that
when I
turning
left
point, David?
when I left Arthur Andersen, I had a couple of friends that just from years of living in Vegas and being around, and when my friends my friends would come to me and ask me to help them with their business that they started. So I was already starting to help people, but I wasn't really helping them for money. It was just helping friends. And so when I left Arthur Andersen, I started helping them for real on a few things. And that led to me thinking about, oh, maybe I should just be starting my own company.
Did that scare you at all, David? Throwing from, hey, I can go here and get a good salary, or I'm going to go off on my own.
Yeah, I think all business owners have that little bit of fear in them.
Fear, yeah.
When they started, and the one thing I did, and it was advice from somebody I knew. I wish I could remember who it was, but they told me to think about what the worst case scenario is if I fail. The worst case scenario would be to go back and get a job making a couple $100,000 a year and live my life that way. So that was the worst thing. Then that's where I knew I would end up if I wasn't successful. So that really gave me the push to go, okay, if that's the worst thing that happens to me, that's what I'm doing right now. So let's go try this. And then if it doesn't work, I can always come back and do what I was doing.
Well, it sounds like you had an opportunity to learn a lot from the folks around you and the organizations you were involved with. But what other type of continuing ed were you doing, David? Like even from a child, were you a book reader? Did you seek out mentors? How did your continuing ed manifest itself?
Yeah, at the time when I was going to college, I actually worked for Olin Mills Portrait Studio. Remember them?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so I started with them. I worked with them in high school a little bit, selling on the phone. And then when I went to college, I needed to have a job still because I had a family I had to support still. The Army did pay me to go to school, but it wasn't enough to take care of my whole family. And so I started working with Olin Mills Portrait Studios, selling on the phone. About 3 months in, they promoted me to manager. About 6 months later, they promoted me to area supervisor, which I had 3 different store phone rooms I was running. And then I went on to be the highest sales area per capita about 9 months later. And how I did that was reading. I just became obsessed. What do I need to do to teach sales? What do I need to do to be a better salesperson myself? How do I manage salespeople? How do I help motivate them and inspire them to do the things they need to do to hit the numbers that they're getting? And so that really led me down the reading or down the avenue of just self-development, right? It's that discipline. If you don't know something, you have to spend some time learning it. And I think you can, like today, we have a lot of people say, just vision it and it'll come true. Well, vision without the discipline is nothing in the end. So you can vision all you want, but you have to have the discipline that goes behind it to make it happen.
Well, hey, our technical director, Matt's flagging us saying it's time for a break. David, you want to get us into that?
Yeah, let's take a break right now, and we'll be back with the strategy. We're flipping roles, Mark, and now we'll
pulling
be back
back
with
the curtain. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll be back with the Strategy Sherpa Show in just a moment with Mark Jeffries hosting and me, the Strategy Sherpa, being interviewed. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
David Chavez. It's the Strategy Sherpa Show, and I am here today with Mark Jeffries, who's I think he's leading the show today, and I am just a victim of whatever question he decides to ask me.
We could go with grilling, we could go with under the microscope, or maybe what we went with, which was we're pulling back the curtain on the Strategy Sherpa.
That's right. That's right. And Mark Jeffries, just so everybody knows, is the producer of the show, the executive producer of our show. So,
yeah, and I'm glad that I played a small role in helping you get this show out to the public. At VoiceAmerica, we're here to help people do that and give voices to folks who want to well, one of the things I have to say that got David and I together is his positive messaging. That was one of the things that attracted me to David's show. Is like, okay, it's not about pushing anybody's buttons and getting people upset. It's David and I had some honest conversations about what are you doing to help people? How can you help them further their business or whether they want to be an entrepreneur or an employee? Now, hey, David, before the break, we were talking about, we are still in your an employee, because we know that you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and we're going to get to assured strategy and what your company's all about. But as an employee, takes me back when I was an early employee, I made one huge mistake. Your show's about mistakes, and that's why I wanted to go in this direction. I made a huge mistake as an employee early on. I was in radio. I was an on-air DJ. And one of the first stations I worked for, I ended up having a meeting with my program director, my boss. And what developed out of that was basically, I ended up telling him in a not so nice manner, he didn't know what he was doing. Now, in a way, that was true. It was absolutely true. My dad was in radio for 30 years. I had a lot of radio knowledge, but I went at the wrong approach as an employee to my supervisor. Now, so David, early on, as you were an employee, is there any employee lessons that you learned so that when you became a supervisor, it kind of informed some of your decisions? Did you have any difficult bosses?
Yes, I have had some difficult bosses in my time. I think the difficult bosses that I had, I actually learned a lot from them. I think that people who are really focused on what they're trying to do are difficult to work with, right? So I think you have to look past that a little bit, and you have to focus on what you're trying to do and learning from the experience more than anything else. And that's not always easy, right? Because there was probably challenging moments in there, but I would say that I'm thankful for the people who were really challenging to work with, because they taught me a lot of lessons about discipline, about staying focused. And as a young employee, I think that we have an idea in our head of what it's supposed to be like versus what it's like. And I always try to keep those two things in my mind, what I think something is supposed to be and what it actually is. So I think that as a young employee, we think that the company's supposed to be doing all kinds of stuff for us, and that we're supposed to, of course, do a good job for them. But I think that if you really want to advance your career, you have to invest in yourself. I remember when I was at Arthur Andersen, there was probably 8 or 9 of us that would stay late, sometimes till 10, 11 o'clock at night. We'd have a problem on a client. We'd all be reading accounting pronouncements. I know that sounds really boring, and it really is. But we'd be reading it, arguing with each other, trying to help each other learn. And again, those sessions were so very valuable. And it's the same things that we did in the Army. The Army, one of the things they're great at is the repetitiveness and the training, and it just never stops. And so we were training ourselves at that time, and it was very, very powerful. And we all went on to do very well. I still keep in touch with several of those guys, and all of us are doing fairly well.
Okay, so we talked about your story from, being on the streets, a young entrepreneur. You went into the Army, and then you went to college, on to Arthur Andersen. Olin Mills got you more into sales. And those sorts of things. So when did we make that jump where you're saying I'm gonna work completely for myself rather than be an employee? What was that trigger?
Yeah, the trigger was I had a really bad boss. So very difficult to deal with. I actually worked for a wealthy family, and there was a gentleman that was actually leading the family, and he was just a real, I'd say egotistical. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but he was always right. So there was no room to even share information with him on something. And he called me in his office one day and he asked me if I liked working there, and I said yes, I enjoy it. And then he asked me if I like him, and I told him no, because I didn't. And at that
Honesty.
point in time, he wanted to get rid of me. But I was way too valuable to the family at the time, and when the family found out of the conversation and him wanting to get rid of me, they put a stop to that. And I ended up staying there another 9 months. But the family was pretty instrumental at helping me getting my CPA firm open. So.
Okay, well, speaking of your CPA firm, is this Assured Strategy now? Is this when you made that leap? Or
No,
you,
I actually owned a CPA firm, and grew it. And I have some pretty great stories about growing that, and some of the things some of the brick walls I ran into. Let's just call them brick walls, because
yeah.
that's what they were. But yeah, I owned it for 11 years. I owned it from 1996 through 2007 when I sold it.
And is that where you were named top 40 under 40 for Nevada and Las Vegas? And I've written the write-ups about you, considered one of the most influential people in Las Vegas. Is that one was taking place at that time?
Yeah, I was a legend in my own mind. Yes, you're correct.
Collecting trophies and certificates for you?
Well, a lot of that is it's great publicity, because back then and still today, you have to brand yourself, right? And you have to make sure that people understand that you're an expert at what you're doing. And we had a very good firm that was doing very good things, and so we were able to put that out there, and I ended up getting honored with some of those awards. And it was a great honor to have some of those things. I probably need to do a little bit more of those. I've gotten away from that over the last 20 years, but at the same time, I really enjoyed the time when I won those things, because it was recognized for all the hard work we had put in growing the company.
Okay, and so then we talk about Assured Strategy. Now I have to ask you off the top, how'd you come up with that name?
Oh, yeah. This is a great story, Mark, and you'll remember this will date ourselves a little bit. But so this is 2008. I'm starting to work on Assured Strategy and just think about it. And we're trying to, and I'm with another lady. Her name was Catherine Taub, and she was out of San Diego. And I had met her as one of my CPA clients, and she had left the place where she was working, and she was with me, and we were trying to figure out names. And we were back in that time, you had to be in the phone book in a certain position. And so we were trying to be up front in the phone book in the consulting section. And so we were trying to think of names with A, and through bantering back and forth for hours, we ended up coming up with Assured Strategies. And then strategies is a little funny term, because strategies, people talk about strategies all the time, but there's no strategies in a business. There is a strategy. And then that's when we actually switched our name to Assured Strategy. So.
And so what did that first company look like? I mean, did you get a physical building? Did you do it out of your house? What did that look like?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I cannot work out of my house for the life of me.
No.
I will find everything else to do in the house except work when I'm there. So I don't work in my house really well. So I got an executive suite. I started talking to people. At the time I was being trained in scaling up, which is the system we primarily use today. And so I was going through the training. We were talking to businesses, getting some consulting, and I had a lady named Emily Hansen that was helping me, and she was just out talking to people and would get me little consulting projects that I could get started. And I have a really funny story around that, because after I sold my CPA firm, BNY Mellon Bank came and offered me a job, and they offered me a salary. It was a pretty good thing. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but let's say that I had the opportunity to earn over $1 million a year, and I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down is because I'm an entrepreneur and I can't never see myself working in these large companies. And that year I turned it down. I made $60,000 on my tax return.
But you stuck with it. So you mentioned scaling up training program. Why did you select the scaling up training model? What appealed to you about that?
Yeah, real quick, what happened was when I was growing my CPA firm about 5 years in, we had rapid growth. You know, you take the selling skills I had and the CPA knowledge that I had, and you put those two things together, our growth was really rapid for the first 4 years, and it was just off the charts. I think even the fourth year we were over 200%. You know, which is pretty big when you're starting to build on a 300, 800%, growth. And what ended up happening is it just stopped one day, and I couldn't figure out why. And what had happened is the thing that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs start businesses because everyone else sucks at it, and we're going to do it better than everybody else. And then what ends up happening as everybody else sucks at it, what ends up happening is that control aspect of our mentality stops us from growing to the next level that we really want to grow to, because we want to do it better than everybody else. Perfection becomes our obsession. And so I stopped growing because I had reached the maximum ability to control at the number of people I had and the growth that we had already had.
Well, and it sounds like some of those lessons you've carried over into how you help clients with assured strategy. Our technical director over at the Voice America Operations Center is flagging us for a break. David, you want to get us into that?
Yeah, I do want to get us into a break. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and this is Mark Jeffrey interviewing me, David Chavez, the Strategy Sherpa, and we will be right back after these quick breaks here.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
This is David Chavez, and we're back with the Strategy Sherpa Show. I have the honor of being interviewed today by Mr. Mark Jeffrey. He is our executive producer over at Voice America. And those of you who are looking to do a podcast, you really should contact them because they have made this so easy. And it is a live radio show. So we're actually on a radio show right now, and this is live. And we're actually broadcasting this live too. So it's a really unique opportunity, and it made it really easy for me to get started in this. So I'll just give you a little plug there, Mark, for all that you guys have done for me.
Oh, thank you very much, David. I mean, I have to say you've made it very easy, really. You're easy to work with, and exactly, Voice America has a lot of different shows spread among our 5 channels. And as we're looking for experts, and then we made our connection. We thought it's perfect because on the business channel, we're all about helping people. And when I started to learn about assured strategy and some of the things that you want to do, some of your core beliefs, Dave, because really you and I initially talked about what your core beliefs were, and it aligned with what we want to do on the business channel here at Voice America. So appreciate the opportunity. We're kind of titling this episode, Pulling Back the Curtain on the Strategy Sherpa. Because we realized after you've been on for, since July, last July, that folks maybe haven't gotten a chance to see you a little bit. So you were telling us a story before the break about scaling up in the training model and then why you picked scaling up. So you complete that thought?
Yeah. So like I was saying, you grow the business to your capacity, right? And I had saw this guy speak at a leadership conference for EO, for Entrepreneurs Organization, in 2001 in Washington, D.C. And it was a guy who wrote a book called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which is Vern Harnish. And I did what all good entrepreneurs do. I took the book back and threw it on my desk, and it sat there for a couple of years. Then that pain really got to me. And In 2003, I picked it up. I was a valuation guy. I actually did valuations on businesses, more for the buying and selling. I've done over 100 transactions of buying and selling companies in my career, probably almost 200 now. And what I lost my train. So what I did is I used that system. I read the book, and we all started implementing it because they didn't have coaches like myself at the time. And we had tripled our valuation in 3 years. And I was just amazed how the system could triple my valuation. But I want to say that, having been a scaling up coach now for over about 15 years, I'm one of the more senior scaling up coaches. I would tell you that scaling a company is a system will help you think and structure your company. If you really want to go fast and get better results inside of your company, you really have to work with the individual leaders in the company and make sure that they're still growing, right? That's probably the biggest challenge that a lot of our clients, and even me, I run into as I'm scaling my company too.
Well, speaking of company and assured strategy, so now you're going to branch out on your own with assured strategy. We talked about how you picked the name in a way because it shows up first in the phone book, Yellow Pages. I love that. I love that part of it. So now you have the challenge of finding clients. So what did you do about that? How did you go about finding clients?
Well, that was where Emily came in, right? I talked about her a little bit earlier. She came in and she was going to networking events, and I was pretty well connected from owning the CPA firm in Las Vegas. But the problem I kept on running into is everyone I would talk to in Vegas knew I was a CPA, and they wanted to bring me back into that world where I'd sold my company. I didn't want to get back into that world. And so literally I had to take CPA off of everything.
Really?
So that people would stop looking at me as just a CPA. And because all the projects Emily was able to get and all related back to accounting in some way.
So how many folks were on your first staff? Was it just you and a couple of people, or?
Just me. And then Emily was helping me a little bit. And then I ended up hiring an assistant for a part-time assistant. So that's how it started out, and just going from there.
Well, what were some of the greatest challenges to helping some of those early clients that you ran into?
I think a little bit of it was just my knowledge of understanding what to do. I think a lot of people, when they're talking to me, even our company now, about what we do for them, there's a competing system called EOS out there. And EOS was written by a guy who was a scaling up coach like me. And people think that EOS people are much cheaper, or the EOS system is cheaper. I think that people get caught up in money when they don't understand having the right coach who really understands business and has a lot of business acumen can make a huge difference in the planning and execution of your plans for your business. And so like I was talking a little earlier, people get mixed up with strategies. No, the company has a strategy. We have execution plans, and there we have many different things we're doing to execute on the strategy of the business. Those are execution plans, right? And so I'll just leave that there for right now.
Okay, so assured strategy, we know that you focus on mistakes. And why was that, David? Why did you, out of all the things maybe somebody should do to scale up their business, or as an entrepreneur, if they want to scale up, you can certainly help them with that. So what was it that made you focus on the mistakes?
Well, a lot of things have to come to do with self-awareness, right? So let's go back to in my CPA firm when I ran into that brick wall and I stopped growing. I had to get the self-awareness that I was a control freak. And that control freakness has not gone away. It's still alive in me today, but I'm a little more conscious of it when people talk to me about it, and I'm able to see it. So really it's self-awareness that you're really trying to find. and really start to deal with, hey, maybe I am this way, and it's not necessarily a bad thing what I'm doing, but I have to be aware of it so it doesn't end up controlling me.
So it sounds like you had a lot going on and you're growing your business and, we know you're traveling all over the place at that point. So how did you maintain a work-life balance? What do you think about that?
Yeah. At Assured Strategy, we don't really believe in work-life balance. I mean, I think we work with a lot of executives and a lot of middle managers and pretty senior middle managers, like a director level, maybe at the manager level too. And I think that if you're going to be a leader at a company, trying to get balance is almost impossible, right? Because what ends up happening is you don't know when the business is going to need your focus and attention. And that focus and attention could be staying like we did at Arthur Andersen till 10 o'clock at night, reviewing things, trying to figure things out, trying to move things forward. And I think that you have to stay dedicated to doing that. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. So, okay.
But your question, you had a specific question. I think I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, no, well, we were talking about some of the things that you learned early on and why you focused on mistakes and why you thought it's important out of all the things. And you were a tax expert and you had all these qualifications. You were an expert in sales, but you decided to, when helping a company, let's kind of focus on the mistakes.
Yeah, it's just about self-awareness. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, when you talk to them, and look, these are companies that have grown. They have a couple hundred employees now. These aren't small companies anymore. They're starting to enter the mid stage. And you talk to business leaders, they will tell you that one of the things they had to go through was realizing mistakes are part of the game, right? That you actually learn a lot from your mistakes. However, you learn a lot if you actually process the mistakes and pay attention to them, right? And you try to learn from what you didn't do well. And so that's what we try to do on the Strategy Sherpa Show, is talk about the mistake, but I don't even really care that you made a mistake. What we're really trying to do is help people understand that those are okay, because entrepreneurs judge themselves and they get in the cycle of judgment, and then that leads to a little bit of spiraling.
So you're saying part of it is getting them to maybe acknowledge the mistakes and then just owning it. Is that part of it?
Yeah, most definitely. And that's a little bit of the humility around it. Like, okay, we made a mistake. What are we going to sit here and talk about the mistake forever? Or are we going to take the mistake, learn from it, and move on to something else? So I really wanted to do a show about mistakes because we have some pretty good leaders that have come on the show and shared mistakes. And I want to show that all leaders make mistakes. Mistakes are what really help us grow to the next level. And I would tell you, I think people learn a lot more when they make a mistake. I would like to think that we learn more when we do things successfully, but unfortunately we don't.
Well, to me, it's interesting, David, that okay, so we know with Assured Strategy, you're dealing with multi-million-dollar companies run by powerful CEOs. And some of these folks is like, yeah, I never mess up. I'm good. And I'm guessing that it's some of your communication skills you learned early on, like with Arthur Andersen or with Olin Mills, that you had to communicate to this important CEO. Okay, but let's focus on some of the things. You have to have some humility. Is that it?
Yeah. I think they do. I do. But a little bit of it is starting to help them understand and listen to their team, because you have people right close to you, and sometimes you don't listen to them as well as you could. And I even fall into that trap now. But we have mechanisms to tell each other when we're actually doing this, right? Because sometimes you just lose consciousness. 85% of your behavior is in your subconscious mind, and you really have no control of what you're doing. You're just running patterns.
Well, you talked about mechanisms kind of to keeping everything on track at your company. Are you a daily meeting person, a weekly meeting person? How do you run that?
Yeah, we have daily meetings, but we're virtual. So we do that on a chat. So because we have people across the country, and we're trying to, and then we're at clients a lot. So We do it via chat, and our daily check-in is what we call it. And then we have a weekly meeting that all the senior leaders get into that meeting. And we don't do it as regularly as larger companies. We do it every other week and try to stick to pretty much that thing. And then we have a monthly meeting, and that's about 4 hours long, where we really dive into things and go through things that are going on. And then every quarter we have a quarterly retreat.
Well, hey, I know Matt at the Voice America Operations Center is flagging us up for a break. On the other side of the break, though, David, I'd like to get into a little bit about, we know that there's lots of clients that are contacting you through assuredstrategy.com. It's one of the easiest ways to get a hold of you there to set up a contact. Maybe we could talk about what clients can expect, a new client, if they contact you folks, and some of the things you could do for them. But I know we have to get into a break now. David, I'll let you take it.
All right. So this is David Chavez, this Strategy Sherpa Show, and we will be right back after this message.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show. And hey, I want to take a second and just let you know that on January 30th, I'm sick, I almost said July. January 30th, I am doing a webinar on cash and how to increase your cash flow in your company. We're going to be talking about like how your employees think that you're making a lot of money. I'm going to walk you through how to read and understand financial statements in a basic way. And then I'm going to show you something you should be sharing with employees so they can help you with cash a little bit more. A lot of leaders will tell me, employees can't help me with cash. Employees can help you a lot with cash. So join us on January 30th, and that is at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah. Hey, we're back here. Let me jump in because I'm the one doing the grilling. Mark Jeffrey here. I'm executive producer for the Strategy Sherpa Show, and proud to be associated with David Chavez. We've been talking before the break. We talked about, assured strategy and how David, I'm still stunned, David, that at one point you turned down a chance to make $1 million a year as a salaried individual because you were your entrepreneurial spirit wouldn't let you do that. You wanted to do it on your own. You said that first year you turned down $1 million, and your first year on your own, you made 60,000. But look, here you are now. You've obviously, I would say, made it. I know you don't feel satisfied with where you're at, but if I want to get into Assured Strategy, your company, if I'm a new client and I go to assuredstrategy.com, contact you through the portal, and what happens next, David?
Yeah, well, what we do is we like to come to one of your meetings, and we can come to it virtually, or look, if you're a good client fit for us after we get some analysis, we can actually physically come there. We'll do that on our own dime. And I don't care where you're located in North America, we can come there. And we really like to sit in the meeting and understand how your meetings are ran. And then after that, we can put together some kind of proposal that'll encompass it. And one of the things that we really focus on when we start working with the client is we do a lot of assessments. And so we're helping people get scaling up, and a lot of people come to us to help them with scaling up. But what we're really doing is assessing the business and trying to find out where the problems are really lying, so that when we're putting in scaling up, we can really focus our time and effort on those problem areas.
So how did you go about selecting you have some great coaches on your team. What's your selection process for saying, okay, you've gotten to know this person, I want to bring you on my team? How'd you do that?
Well, I would tell you, if we've messed up more there than anywhere else in this company, one of the things is that there's coaches out there everywhere now. How do business owners really understand what is a good coach and what is not such a good coach? And I will tell you that on our journey trying to find coaches, we've had a lot of bad coaches end up even in our firm, even though we thought they were good. You have to understand that people have to learn how to coach. Coaching is not something that people just do. And it's not as easy as just sitting down and talking to somebody. You're trying to help them move to some other stage. They want change of some kind in themselves, in their business, whatever it is. And I can't just talk to them and get the change. I have to have some kind of plan and a program that we put them through that really helps them understand and get clarity of what they want. A lot of people don't know what they want. I can tell you, I've had several clients that after we started working with them for a little while, they just decided they didn't even want to grow their business. And I think that's really good, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing, because why would you want to spend 10 years talking about growing a company that you don't even realize you don't even really want to grow? So it's really just helping them understand these things.
Well, that's great. And I guess that also goes back to your communication skills that you've developed along the way in order to find those good coaches and trainers. As we both know, it can be tough to find those folks. So
well, and also because like in accounting, people are trained in accounting, right? Coaches come from all over the place, right? So they have a lot of different skill sets. And I would tell you that coaches come and they may think they have the ability to coach because they were a great salesperson or a good marketing person or something like that, where really I think the best coaches that we have are people who have been and seen all the facets of a company and understand sort of how they run. Those are the best coaches that we have, because not only are we coaching our clients and teaching them scaling up, but we're also helping them think about their business. And so we have to have done something to be able to do that. You have to have actually experienced in order to do that.
Hey, David, we just passed obviously January 1st. So New Year's goals, are you somebody who every year you make fresh new goals for the year? You're not one of those people? Why is that?
Because most of them just don't come true.
Yeah.
So I never start in January. If I want to start something new, I'll usually start it in the middle or end of January. And because I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions. Most resolutions are dead by the end of the first year, because our brain really takes us. We run patterns. 85% of our behaviors in our subconscious mind, and we're just running patterns. And we have to get out of those patterns to really make the change. And that's why a lot of these weight loss commercials are 3 weeks. Just give us 3 weeks. It takes about 21 days to develop a pattern of some kind. So you have to really stick with something if you're going to make a change for at least 21 days, but it takes 365 days to make it a lifetime change. And that's how we work with people at Assured Strategy. It's okay for us to do a one-off, like a one retreat facilitating or a workshop for a potential client or something like that. But really, we're not really, that's not going to benefit the company. They really need to work with us for a year to really get the benefit of the company. And most of our clients end up working with us for about 3 to 4 years. But if they really want to make the change forever, they really need to stay with it for a longer period of time.
Hey, David, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to mention that you mentioned earlier Vern Harnish's book and the impact it had on you. And I want to point out to our listeners that David actually had a chance to interview Vern. It's a great interview. Listen to myself. If you go to voiceamerica.com and you look up either Strategy Sherpa or search David Chavez, you'll see Vern Harnish's name. Strongly recommend you have a chance, when you get a chance, to go ahead and listen to that episode. It's very enlightening. David, I know we're coming up to the end. I'll let you go ahead and wrap up the show, buddy.
Okay, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Vern at the end there, Mark, because Vern was really telling on the podcast, and he shared some very valuable information on that podcast, a big mistake he made. And he was very honest about what he made it with scaling up even. And so I really appreciated that. And I think that if you're really wanting to learn about what we do at Assured Strategy, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you, maybe come to one of your meetings and really understand what you're trying to do with your business and what your long-term goals are. And then once you get that focus, we can really help your company just soar.
You have a lot of great people working for you. All folks need to do is go to assuredstrategy.com.
Yep. And why we have a whole team is because we think that people have to be matched up with the personality that fits best for them. And that's why I developed a team, because my personality doesn't fit with every single person inside of a company. So
understood.
Yeah.
Sir.
But definitely appreciate you being on today, Mark, and leading the show. Thank you very much for doing this. This has been sitting on the other side. Now I know how my guests feel a little bit. So it's very good, and got caught with not remembering the question and all the things my guests do. So it was a very valuable experience for me, and I appreciate that. A lot of learning in this episode for me. So I just wanted to let everybody know, Mark Jeffries and Voice America, a very strong ally of ours. They have definitely helped us a lot in our business. And I hope everyone has a chance to really listen to the Vern Harnish episode. And don't forget, January 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. or 1 a.m. Eastern time, we will be doing a cash webinar. And Mark, any last words?
That's it. Thanks for listening.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the show today, and we look forward to seeing you or talking with you on the next show.